Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. You know, as a rod builder, one thing that I learned real fast was that everyone else in your area knows who to go to then to get their guides replaced, to get a broken rod repaired, to get a rod tip replaced. There's just not many people in an area that generally know how to replace a guide or how to thread a rod. It's one of those things that if you learn the skill, other people will come to you because there aren't many places that do it. I mean, you may be lucky and have a bait shop in your area that does it, or have somebody in the area that does it. But I can tell you, for me, if I wanted to have something repaired, it was almost a 50-minute drive to get there. And then you got to leave the rod there because you can't just have it repaired while you're there. It needs to sit in the drying rack for a day. So you got to make two trips. So from a timeliness standpoint, it's really not ideal because you're making two drives to wherever you need to go. And realistically, you're lucky if you can get a rod back in under a week. Most places will take several weeks, if not several months, to get to your rods, which then means you potentially have rods that are out of commission for a long period of time. So to have the skill of being able to replace the guides and make some simple rod work happen is really important, not just for you, but potentially your team partner or your other buddies in the area that want to have a rod repaired. So what I want to do is show you how simple it is to go through the process of making some simple rod repairs with a few tools. It's not hard at all. It's something that I think most people don't realize how easy it is. They just have never had anyone show them how to go about doing it. So that's what I want to do here is help you learn how to do this and give you at least the quick start that may kind of push you forward into the road of maybe not rod building, but just being able to repair your own rods, because that is a very valuable trait to have. So what you need here is just a simple uh, rod wrapper in some form. This is just a hand wrapper, nothing expensive, nothing fancy, no foot pedals. I turn the rod all by hand, as you can see. That's how I'm going to thread it. Once you've got that, then you're talking about potentially needing a couple of different thread colors, maybe to match the rod wraps that are already on your rod. You need some two-part epoxy. This is just the Flex Coat high build formula that I like to use. And then you need your guides. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's not difficult at all. I get all these components at mudhole.com. They are kind of like the Bass Pro Shops of rod building. They have everything you would need, from the rod blanks all the way to components. And they have a ton of really helpful tutorial information on their YouTube channel or on their website. They will show you how to build a rod and repair a rod. It's really a great source to have. And it's just like I said, guys, this is not that difficult. It's pretty straightforward. And if you have the ability to, maybe spend it to get everything here, you're talking about under $100. And, at that point, if you have the ability to do this, you can easily recoup that by, charging a few people in your area a few bucks just to repair rods. So you can make some money doing this if you wanted to do it that way. But it really, just in terms of recouping your cost, it's something that is well worth the little bit of an expense, and you're pretty much going to save that, in my opinion, in the time that you save in having to drive someplace and take a rod and potentially have a rod that's out of commission. Okay, so this is how we do it. In this case, I've got a rod here that I'm missing the guide out of. You could potentially slide a new guide up in there, try to jam some rod glue in there. I want to do it the right way, so I'm going to take that old wrapping off and then just put a new guide on, wrap it back up, throw some epoxy on it, and throw it in the dryer. So that's what we're going to do. So the first step I got to do is take the thread off. In this case, I have not, there is not a broken foot up under the thread. So I can actually get my scissors down under the tip. I can cut the tip and I can just peel it back. So we're going to do that right now. Get that cleaned up for the new guide to go back on. All right, so we've removed the thread work. We've cleaned up the whole area of the blank. The nice thing about when you remove a guide, you're always going to be able to see where that guide needs to go. So it's really easy just to place the new one on there, but we've cleaned it up, gotten the thread off, everything came off just perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to mount the guide back on and start the thread work. What I do is I just take some, this is just a adhesive stick. It's a CRB one, but I'll just take this. I'll heat up the foot of the guide, tap it on there to get just a little bit of the adhesiveness on there, and then I can stick that on the guide to start my thread work. It just makes it a lot easier, and that's kind of the process I use. Everyone's got different ones, but that just seems to work really well for me. So I'm going to go ahead and stick the guide on and start the thread work. So we've got the guide stuck on there. Now to start this, all you got to do is you take your thread and you put it right at the base of where the foot of the guide starts. At that point, I do one wrap on the left side of the thread and then 3 back across over the top of the guide. And that's how you start it. And then at this point, it's just hand wrapping. So I'm just going to start it nice and slow. Make sure that it's continuously moving to the right up the guide. And you hold tension on the tag end until you cross over it. In this case, I've crossed over it. I'll do 1 extra wrap. And now I'm going to cut my tag end off. And I'll just go back to wrapping it until I'm about 2/3 of the way up. Make sure that it's going on, it's not stacking on top of each other, but just running to the right up the foot of the guide. And at this point, I'm going to put my pull through, which is just a simple, this is just a fluorocarbon leader. I'll just put it under, you wrap it, and then this is what's you're going to wrap over this, and then you're going to pull the tag end back under the line, which is going to keep you from having the tag end sticking out of your guide or your thread work. So I'm going to go to the point where I hit where about the foot of the guide starts to leave the blank. Right there. So now I'm going to put pressure on top of my pull through. I'm going to cut my thread line, and then at that point I just want to take the thread and pull it through my pull through, and then I'll grab the tag end, but it's through the pull through. So when I pull my pull through, it's going to want to pull that underneath. So that's tight. Now, if I were to pull the pull through right now with the tag line, this would pull all the way through the thread and I'd have a big tag. I don't want that. I want to cut it off right at the base. Now I'm going to apply pressure when I pull the pull through. So I put pressure on top, pop the pull through out, and you see my tag end is underneath. Now I do have just a tiny bit of a little bit of threads of the tag end sticking through. I'm going to take some heat and I'm going to melt that right up real quick. It takes a quick touch just like that. That will burn off most of the threads, and then I can just take my burnishing tool and flatten it out so that I know I'm not going to get any sort of line or a bump when I go ahead and put the epoxy on. But that's it. That's our thread work right there. So now we just got to apply the epoxy, and we'll let that dry. So let's mix up the epoxy and I'll show you how to apply it. All right, so I've mixed up my 2-part epoxy here. Everything is ready to go. I just made a tiny little bit just to put it on the single guide that I need to replace. And you're just going to take it and you're just going to apply it directly on top. I like to start right on the top and get a good coat right down the middle before I move to the left and to the right. And I'll go over about a, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. And then I'll push it back over to the right side. I like to make sure I've got some around the foot. And some people will put on a couple of light coats. I'm just looking to get this back up and running. I prefer to put on just a nice solid first coat. If I need to go back a second time, I can go back a second time. But in this case, I'm not looking to do that with this rod. So once I've applied a decent coat, I'm going to apply a little bit of heat just to make sure that it's smooth across the board. I do not like to go under. I like to just kind of run on the side. It doesn't take much heat just to make sure everything's good. If you apply too much heat, it definitely can burn the threads and you can get discoloration or even burn completely through them. But this one's looking good. So we're going to let this dry, and by tomorrow it'll be ready to roll. Looks good, guys. I'm happy with the way that this turned out. The new guide is on there. Everything seems to have cured properly. This rod is ready to get back into action. I'm telling you, in 15 minutes of time, we were able to remove the old thread work, put the new guide on, thread the new guide, put a 2-part epoxy on, throw it in the rod dryer in 15 minutes of time. Definitely something that was very simple and easy to do, not anything difficult. Most people just don't know how to do that. And that's why I'm showing you this video, so that you can go out and do this on your own, because honestly, for the expense, for the few parts that you'd need for this, you could recoup those costs by probably having 3 guides put on by your local bait shop. I mean, it's just that inexpensive to do it on your own. And a lot of times people will charge you 20, 30, 40 bucks to repair 1 guide. So it's definitely a skill set worth learning for, an avid angler. And it, in my case, I'm doing it just to use this rod. I want to bring it back into a usable form. But if you wanted to make a little side money, you could open up a local business, and just do this out of your basement, where you could make a lot of money, probably just from your local club members, local tournament guys, that type of thing. Because everyone's always looking for a rod repair guy, because they're not easy to come about. And a lot of times when you find one, you got to travel an hour away, and that ends up being 4 hours of drive time. So it's worth it just to learn how to do this on your part, versus having to spend the money to have somebody else repair a rod for you. Definitely not something that's difficult. All of us can learn how to do this. This was simple. I mean, it's a couple of wraps and you got a new guide on, really is what it comes down to. Simple work. I hope you enjoyed this, because this is something that I plan to do a lot more videos of, is just rod building work. I'm not sure, hopefully you can see over here, I've got a bunch of MHX blanks that just came in the mail. What I plan to do this summer, or throughout the rest of the year, is to build those blanks. I'll tell you what blank I'm building, give you the specs that I'm building that to, so that you can replicate it if you so choose to. And it'll be the rods that I use on a daily basis. So say, for example, it's the CB907, which is the rod I like to use for chatterbaits. I'll go ahead, we'll do a build, an actual video showing me building it. I'll provide you all the specs so that you can get the exact same components, the exact same specs that I'm using to build the rod. And then I'll take it out on the water and show you why I like that rod for that specific bait that I'm building, or that technique. I hope that sounds good to you guys. If it does, hit that like button so that I know you're interested in these types of videos. I truly enjoy building rods. It's something that is a skill set that I have that just really brings enjoyment to me. It's something I do a lot of times during the winter months to pass the winter time. And it's something, though, that really enhances my love of fishing, because when you catch a fish on a rod you built, it just makes it feel that much better. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, hit that like button, like I said, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video. Another good one's coming out.